episode of Class is in Session. This show, exclusively on Black Enterprise, highlights the latest happenings inside HBCU classrooms, public policy issues facing these historic institutions, the business side of HBCU sports, and movers and shakers in the higher education space. I'm your host, Ashley Stevens. I'm excited to have a special guest with us who's going to talk about creating pathways and also important coursework for Black students and HBCU students in computer science and computer engineering. It's a space that we are often underrepresented, but Michael Ellison is the CEO and co-founder of CodePath, and his organization aims to change that. Welcome to Classes in Session, Michael Ellison.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you because it sounds like the work that you do is very needed and very important. So tell us a little bit about CodePath and its mission.
So the CodePath has a mission to create the most diverse generation of software engineers, CTOs, and founders. We have served over 26,000 students across over 100 colleges and university partners. We're one of the largest organizations in the country and most impactful at getting people from low-income, underrepresented backgrounds into the most competitive software engineering roles in the country and even in the world.
Wow, that's remarkable. How many years has CodePath been operating? And I know you mentioned a little bit the number of schools that you're supporting. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, so we've been operating since 2017 when we became a nonprofit. It's kind of an interesting story. We were seed funded by Facebook's engineering team. At the time, they gave us $1 million, and they were hoping that we could actually change the schools that they would recruit out of at scale. So it was kind of like this tech nonprofit hybrid investment, and 5 years plus, they're still one of our biggest partners. So I think we've done a decent job there.
Decent job is an understatement, Michael. I mean, you mentioned the impact that you've had on students. Let's talk a little bit about some of those partner employers that you work with. Where are students placed on internships in partnership with CodePath?
Mm-hmm. So when you look at the 26,000 alumni that we have, you stack rank the highest concentration of where they work. The number one concentration is Amazon, hiring hundreds upon hundreds of students every single year, followed by Microsoft, followed by Google, and then the list goes along the lines of most competitive software engineering companies. So we do a really good job of getting our students into the most competitive job. Now, that's really important because it correlates to first-year salaries. Our students average $92,000 first-year salaries. That's not counting what they then get into. And, we're working with students from a lot of the schools that the companies don't prioritize and recruit out of. We're in a lot of community colleges. We're in a lot of state schools. We're in a lot of the smaller HBCUs that only have a few CS professors. So we're really, really proud of those outcomes.
The outcomes are impactful. And let's touch a little bit about that on how does this fill a need? And you touched on this briefly, but specifically for HBCUs, because we're obviously interested to know, how does CodePath fill a need, particularly for those smaller HBCUs that may not have a robust computer science or computer engineering program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's zoom out and just talk about what's going on in higher education, period. So you've had a lot of schools struggling to maintain and increase enrollments. However, computer science remains an area where students are trying to enroll in that more than other majors. You also see computer science graduates having great job outcomes, earning higher salaries on average other majors. And at the same time, you have this nationwide shortage of CS professors. Now, if you're a smaller CS program, a lot of HBCUs do have smaller CS programs, even though they have really strong STEM departments. Then the issues are even more challenging. It's harder to compete with the larger schools that have the larger CS departments. And so one of the areas that CodePath is most impactful is that we are actually, in some cases, providing adjunct faculty. In other cases, we're partnering with different large companies. We partnered with Walmart, 1890s Foundation in order to do capacity building, training professors across a number of HBCUs. And then very importantly, on top of increasing capacity, we are also very important for helping bridge a gap with industry. So even if you look at the most competitive CS programs across the country, then it's actually not typical that you would learn web development or iOS development. You may not know how to build web applications, mobile applications. A lot of CS programming focuses on theory versus practice because the practice is changing day by day, week by week. That's where CodePath is a really valuable partner to these schools because we specialize in being at the cutting edge of software development. So in addition to capacity, which also means more personalized support, more mentorship, more guidance, more interaction with professional engineers, we also are focused on making sure that students are exposed to the latest modern software engineering practices that then set them up for success and for great job outcomes.
That's fantastic that you're feeling that need in that way. Does that mean that CodePath employs, let's say adjunct faculty or professors? Is it all done virtually, or are there professors that actually go to some of these campuses in person?
So we're doing both, and CodePath will look like a flipped classroom on top of this in-person student experience. We have trained student TAs across the schools. We're also training professors. And if you can think of the typical classroom experience, 2 to 4 hours a week, where you still have professors, you still have the students as TAs, we have on top of that CodePath, where you're logging into our platform, videos, guides, walkthroughs, and we have the centralized community across all schools. So, as an example, we have an iOS course at Howard University. That same iOS course is also delivered at Georgia State and at dozens of other colleges and universities. And this is one of the really important aspects of our program is building that community across schools. You might be the one and only person of color inside of your program, but we intend for you to build friendships, relationships, connections across the schools. And because we are centrally providing curriculum, support, training, and expertise, then it's able to accomplish this sense of belonging, the sense of community across a lot of different schools. And then, of course, that provides us with an opportunity to either in on site to provide professional engineers to be adjunct as part of the classroom experience, or depending on the school, it might be something that is remote. So we do try to have some flexibility for the schools to plug in the way that we can best support them.
Got it. There's something that you mentioned. You said some of the students may be the only one, perhaps, who looks like them or comes from a similar background. I think that's really important. And I wanted to just ask, is that something that resonates with you? Is that part of why you have gotten into the space to help other students? Is that a story that personally reflects an experience that you had?
Yeah, certainly. A lot of why CodePath does what it does and how it does what it does is based on my personal journey. I was, 5 years old when my father was incarcerated. My parents split. Were homeless at times as I was growing up, and we still had a pretty tight knit family. We valued education. Did well enough in math to get scholarships going to school. When I got to school, because I'd done well in math, they said, "Well, maybe you should do computer science." I'd never met a software engineer before. Didn't know what computer science even meant. And, I was in a classroom where nobody looked like me and there were no people from similar backgrounds. Now, when I got in there, the normal and typical experience that you see is that a lot of the students have already programmed before. They've already connected with software engineers, and the curriculum, the introductory CS sequence, it caters to that. So when you're the one and only, it's challenging enough. But then when you also come from backgrounds where you haven't had exposure into industry, you don't understand the different concepts, then it creates this really deep sense of imposter syndrome. You feel like you don't belong. You don't feel like that's the place for you. That was my case. I ended up dropping out of CS that freshman year, but was a really ambitious young person. Founded my first nonprofit when I was 19 years old, founded several additional nonprofits, get really obsessed with how can you drive high impact, high scale, leading to me getting to technology, founding tech companies. Got really fortunate where I was on the founding team of a company that was acquired for over $3 billion a couple of years ago. So, all of that considered to be incredibly lucky, incredibly fortunate, based on me having to find tech, but really from a place of trying to drive deep impact.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your personal journey. and where it's led you today to being very successful in this space and helping other students who look like you, who look like us. And I also related to this, found it very interesting. I saw a stat on your website that says 80% of underrepresented minorities drop out of computer science. You talked about your own journey of dropping out. Why is that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I mentioned before this major capacity gap. We can't hire enough professors. You can't hire enough professors. You don't have enough support. You're not catering to multiple pathways. You're catering to the smallest number of most prepared students. And so, Intro to CS across a lot of these different programs, they're weed out courses, and they cater to students that already have programming experience. And they definitely are not flexible depending on the different type of high school you may have gone to or whatnot. When you're looking at low income, underrepresented populations, you're more likely to not have that exposure to CS. You're
Mhm.
more likely to not have that exposure to software engineers. You're much more likely to not have seen somebody who looks like you, who comes from a similar background. It's probably not even on your radar. So we have challenges when it comes to increasing enrollment from inspiration, the exposure, the inspiration. And then also when it comes to the actual classroom environment, then there's a dramatic cliff. I was chatting with Hadi, who's the founder of code.org, a couple months ago. He was telling me that there's been this 10x increase in APCS enrollment over the past something like 10 years, but there's only been something like a 1.5x increase in enrollment in college computing programs. And so there's been this massive cliff. There's been interest, but then there's been a huge drop off rate because the lack of capacity, lack of support, lack of personalized pathways, even though there is this interest. And this disproportionately hurts underrepresented populations, low income populations that haven't had that exposure. So, the potential is there, the opportunity is there. We just need to make sure that from day one, with students coming into school, then we're exposing them and connecting them with a combination of role models, but then also the right path based on where they're coming from so that they can get that sense of belonging and reach their full potential.
Awesome. That's remarkable to hear that, right? That you're kind of bridging the gap and making sure that there's interest. I think you mentioned interest and inspiration as well. Let's talk a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about some of the hiring rate. You partner with a lot of the major tech, software development, software engineering companies. What are some of the rates of students who are with CodePath? The hiring rates that they come out from with these companies after internships.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So CodePath across all colleges, universities. You take even one CodePath class. We have 14 plus, but you take even one CodePath class, then we have 70 to 80% of the students are getting a job opportunity. And one thing that is really exciting, phenomenal about CodePath is that we believed in personalized education at scale. So that means when you're applying to CodePath courses, we assess what your gaps are, what's the highest leverage path for you to pass a technical interview. Or maybe technical interviewing isn't the biggest pain point. Maybe there are specific types of software development you need more exposure to for on the job performance. We'll direct you to the right path that's highest leverage to get you to that first internship, second internship, and to ultimately get competitive jobs in tech. So it is this personalized approach at scale that then leads to great job outcomes. And even it's translated to some companies allowing CodePath students to be hired without even interviewing them. So just imagine taking CodePath courses. CodePath says you're good enough. We've evaluated you, and we're going to match you to your first high-paying internship or job opportunity. And it doesn't even matter if you have a resume. That's what we have been able to unlock with certain major tech companies, and we're planning to expand that.
That's remarkable. That's really, really good stuff. I understand there's an exciting announcement that has just been made. So let's talk a little bit about that. And again, for folks who are just joining us, we're here with Michael Ellison, the CEO and co founder of CodePath. And they aim to create pathways through coursework and internships and job placements for underrepresented students in the computer science, computer technology fields. So let's talk about a really exciting announcement that just happened with one of our HBCUs, Florida Memorial University.
Yeah, well, so Florida Memorial University, They are the only HBCU in South Florida, so extremely important. Like many HBCUs, they're very important for the Black community. They're a source of upward mobility. Also, similar to a lot of HBCUs, they have a smaller computer science program. And so CodePath is partnering with FMU and JP Morgan. JP Morgan gave FMU $1 million, and then we were connected to them in order to help specifically with job outcomes. For FMU, we're going to do a combination of training faculty. We're going to be launching web development courses to help to increase enrollment. This increased enrollment with the particular web courses we're offering will also help to inspire more students to pursue computer science as a major, as well as also what one of the most important courses is our technical interview prep course. So think of this kind of like the SAT, but getting into tech companies. And CodePath has arguably the best course in the country at, you take this course, very rigorous mock interviews with professional engineers. We can predict what types of companies that you could be able to pass the technical interview. So it's really game changing for students. We're partnering across all these different areas so that we can help to drive increased enrollment as well as help the students who are already talented at FMU to be able to be even better prepared for tech companies, technical interviews, and get great paying jobs.
That's phenomenal. Well, congratulations on the partnership between CodePath, the investment from JP Morgan Chase that will go into Florida Memorial University. As you may know, we may have shared with your team that we're excited that Black Enterprise hosts a Be Smart Hackathon hosted at American Airlines, and we held that in November of this past year. And Florida Memorial was a new team to the hackathon. And they were a combined team. I think they had a student from Spelman, from Norfolk State, and then 2 or 3 students from Florida Memorial. And their first time entering, they won second place. Second place. And the hackathon is all about, it's a 24-hour coding competition. And they have to develop a solution that would work in real life for the airline industry, specifically with American Airlines. And so we were really excited that Florida Memorial, they're really rocking and rolling. And there's some really bright and brilliant minds in this space. So it's really encouraging to see organizations like yours, and then also JP Morgan Chase continuing to make investments so we can continue to build up that pipeline of future tech leaders, because they're definitely there. They are definitely there. Yes. Awesome. And lastly, can you tell us a little bit about, are there what other HBCUs or minority serving institutions does CodePath work with?
So we're working with over 13 additional HBCUs in particular, dozens and dozens of minority serving institutions, and overall, we're talking about 100 plus colleges and universities. So there's a number of schools we focus on working with. I think maybe a FIU or even a Georgia State. We're looking at the schools that have the largest number of Black, Latinx, Indigenous students across the country. And that's where we've been focusing. Now, the range of programming that we do, you can think of the first 5 years of CodePath, 2017 to 2022, started with 700 students per year, expanded to 7,000 plus students per year. We'll serve about 12,000 this year. Very fast growth, but very intentionally focused on intense depth. HBCUs, as well as our nation's community colleges and state schools, can be really true engines of innovation. So many talented students are pursuing their paths to upward mobility through these institutions. And so we have been very much focused our next phase of growth on tightly partnering with them and having very deep impact.
Awesome. Deep impact sounds like it's what it's all about. Now, we talked a little bit about CodePath supporting some of the undergraduate programs, but do you also support graduate or professional degree programs or students or courses?
We have about 10% of our students are master's and PhD students. Because as I mentioned before, a lot of computing programs, it's more theory versus practice. And we have really great cybersecurity courses, iOS, Android courses. And regardless of the level that you're at, then there is a need and a desire for a lot of students to be able to just operate on the cutting edge from more practical software engineering standpoint. So we get a lot of students that are in schools that are applying that want to take again either just general coding courses or they're preparing for technical interviews, and we'll continue to serve. It's the bread and butter really is the increasing enrollment, the retention, the getting your first job and second job and so forth. But we're also happy to support any students that we can be helpful with.
Phenomenal. And lastly, Michael, what's next for CodePath? What can folks expect? And also, where can folks find out more about what you do?
Well, so, CodePath on track to serve around 12,000 students this year. And we have some very aggressive goals. Scale our program 10x over the next 5 years, reaching 100,000 students per year. We are trying to diversify the nation's most competitive technical roles. So we're trying to get to the level of scale, but also make sure that we are embedded enough inside the schools, serving the largest numbers of students so that we can really change what the default education pathway looks like. It's not just getting to that large number, but imagine if CodePath and the right wraparound supports could be the default experience, the normal experience if you're raising your hand, you're interested in tech. So in contrast to my experience, you have everything you need, the right intervention at the right time from freshman to sophomore to junior to senior, you really unlock your potential. So that quality at scale is that target that we have in the next 5 years. And, it's, we need lots of volunteers. This is a community by community, region by region. This is partnering with organizations that are working with high school students to make sure that we get on their radar, that they see that tech is a path for them. And then working with especially a lot of HBCUs. We're excited about these bridge programs where we connect with them even before they get onto campus to engage them with technology. So a lot that we're doing, focus on that quality and scale. And then for connecting with CodePath, codepath.org is our website. And, we pride ourselves on having the right options, right personalized recommendations for students, regardless of where they are on their journey.
Love to hear personalized recommendations for students, no matter where they are on their journey. And it sounds like with CodePath, you're making sure that journey is to greatness in careers in computer science and computer engineering. Michael Ellison, thank you so much for being here on this episode of Classes in Session. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And to everyone who's watching, be sure to share this episode. Stay posted on the latest and greatest on all of Black Enterprise's social media channels and also on blackenterprise.com. I'm your host, Ashley Stevens, and for this episode of Classes in Session, class is dismissed.